Hi, my name is Ali Fattom. I am a Senior Vice President for Vaccine Research and Development at Blue Willow Biologics in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And also I'm an adjunct associate professor at the University of Michigan. I've been here in the US for 32 years. I started in Washington, DC area at the NIH in 1986-87. And I moved to Ann Arbor, Michigan about 10 years ago to join the small company, which is a spin-off from the University of Michigan based on a technology invented at the University of Michigan. And therefore, I was hired to take it to the next level, which is making products to vaccines for infectious diseases. I was born in Nahef town. It's a small town in North Galilee. It's halfway between Akka and Safad. And I was born in the 50s. I'm not going to tell you when. And for a big family, I have 11 siblings, and I'm number 2. Born into the arena of the military governance of the Galilee by the Israeli after the Nakba, 1948. Most of our lands was confiscated. Only some of the land was left. It's not enough really to maintain and support a big family. My father became a laborer, and we all start working in the land. What we're doing, we're just growing wheat, tobacco, and also olive trees for making olives and olive oil. That's what we had, and therefore it's really a very not very rich in village. Most of the people were working either in the fields or they were working as laborers in the Israelis. Now, during that period of time, if you want to go out and find a job and work for an Israeli corporate, you have to get a permit from the military governor. And that permit comes with a price.
Yeah.
And you have to renew that every week. So Akka, which is about 20 kilometers, about 12 miles from my village, you can see it only in occasions because you need to have a permit to get to Akka. And so for a long time, it's really been kind of restricted into one place. And of course, the movement between the Arab villages was open. So you can move from one village to the other, but to go out into what they used to call it Jewish areas, you have to have a permit. The village, there was no paved roads or streets in the village. It was all dirt. Schooling, the schools were having elementary schools only. In all of the north, we had only 2 high schools, one in Kufr Yasif and one in Arami. And from there, the situation was not very conducive for even, studying. It's no running water, no electricity. The running water arrived in 1966. And electricity arrived when I started my PhD in 1977. So you can tell, what is the situation. So the background of poverty and also inability to even imagine things and have some ambitions is really limited. I think what really helped us are the parents. My father, who really, I give him all the credit for whatever we have achieved, is that he said from the beginning, I don't care about anything, you guys have to study. And he was forcing everybody to study and ended up a sibling of all my sisters and brothers. There are 7 graduated from college, from university. So that was the driver really behind the whole thing. So you finish your elementary school and then you go to high school. High school usually is the magnet where every village, about 10 or 15 villages go to one high school, which means you have to be one of the top 5% or 10% to be able to go to a secondary school or high school. And that was really an achievement. You go there and now you are really meeting everybody from everywhere around the villages. And also the school at Rami was one of the best schools, best teachers, and also was kind of patriotic, meaning that really promotes the idea of being a Palestinian, being an Arab, and being politically advanced. So there, I think everything starts to crystallize, your identity, your belonging, your Palestinian identity, and so forth, and you can start getting to know people around. And the school in Rami was mostly humanities, meaning just no science, arts. And I was lucky that when I was in 10th grade, we started the major in sciences. So I enrolled in that, and we are only 14 or 15 students there because nobody really wanted to experience this. It's a new initiative. And we graduated, and many of us went to the university. Now, to go to the university, that's a big jump because you're going from protective area where you feel belong, you feel all your friends or your family, language, culture, and so forth. You want to move to a big city. And the big city in this case was either Tel Aviv or Jerusalem or Haifa. And of course, Haifa they had no sciences. The Technion was more engineering and so forth. And I went to the university, the Hebrew University in Jerusalem for that purpose. And I started in 1972 to study biology. And so there, everything now is new. The language is new. Even we study Hebrew in the middle school and the high school. It's not good enough because it's like you are really talking in biblical Hebrew, which is ridiculous. Jews themselves, they don't speak that language, so basically. So it was really very nice adaptation. We have to adapt to the new area and the new language, the new people. And suddenly you discover that for the first time you're face to face with your oppressor. And that's really where things started to, and you can see that you're meeting hatred, you're meeting discrimination, you're needing pushing out, you're not belonging, not the university, not the atmosphere, not the dorms, not any activity that they do. You're not part of it, you're an outsider. And the numbers were very low. We have only 300 Arab students at the time. And the big student body is about 16,000. So we are really few.
Yeah, very few.
So that's where things started. And challenges, really small things that you don't think about become challenge. To have a partner in the lab, that's a challenge because not many people would like really to have a partner like you. Or if you want to have, let's say, dorms, to live, you have to find an Arab partner. You cannot live, or they will not put you in with a Jewish guy in the dorms. And if they put you, what happened to me the first time, he came back and he asked me that his parents will not feel good that he lives with an Arab. So he asked that he want to leave, so I don't have to be offended. I said, okay, you go ahead and leave. So that's really, those are the kind of things. And the 70s, you also witnessed the rise of the national movement, Palestinian national movement. And there you can see that, being a Palestinian, so you become proud, you're out and you are fighting for rights and so forth. That's where everything started. And we were very active in that part. And also, I did not know who is Sheldon Edelson until I came to the United States. There were dorms called Edelson dorms. So probably were funded or donated by Sheldon Edelson. And they have about 5 or 6 homes on the French Hill and in Jerusalem and in the middle. And they want to take these people out and take their land and build the dorms there. That was the first fight that really we found ourselves in. And we built bridges with the Israeli leftist groups And we worked hard, and those families, until today, they are still in their homes there. They were not able
That's great.
So you can see that activism started there. And of course, with your close to the East Jerusalem, or the Arab Jerusalem, as we call it, Quds al-Arabiya, so we can, you feel home there. You go in, see your people and so forth. So that really gave us some more, let's say, emotional depth, that we have support, we have families, we know the people, we know where to go and eat hummus. It's at Abu Shukri, and go and have. It's like a different life, and it's really encapsulated life, like an Arab, like a Palestinian. And then we get also to get acquainted with the Palestinian national movement also in the West Bank and in Jerusalem. That's another factor that allowed us really to get out of our shell and really open up and become more belonging and Palestinians, and the identity becomes more solid. So that's the time where also the Israeli students movement is becoming more and more fascist hatred, and they want us out of the dorms. They think that we are traitors, and every time we do an activity, they come and start the fights. So we had a few good fights. And ironically enough, that the people that we fought with at the campus, during those days, one became foreign minister, one became the head of the Knesset, one became the police minister in the Netanyahu. So even the foreign minister, Abraham Katz, he was in one of those fights. And Lieberman, he was a gangster, he was
big names.
Yeah. These are the names, these are the people that we studied with in the university, and really we fought almost daily with each. So you graduate from the Hebrew University, and I did my master's degree in Tel Aviv, and during that time we had the 1974, we had the land day, Yom al-Ard, and that was really a turning point where everything really started to become bigger and bigger, and we get more activity and more activism, and also we built more bridges to Arab students in different Israeli universities. So for the first time, we are going to make a big regional Arab student union, and that was what we done. And you can see that activities are happening in Tel Aviv, in Be'er Sabah, in Haifa, in Technion, in Jerusalem. We all become one body, and that's really helped a lot in formalizing a national movement, which later became the Sons of the Village, or Abna al-Balad, which is a very progressive Palestinian movement. And later on, they created a party that went into the Knesset when I was here, Azmi Shara and all the rest. It's called At-Tajammu' al-Arabi. After I finished the PhD, there was an issue, where to go. If you are a Palestinian and you finish at the Hebrew University, you can do anything, study, you can finish your PhD, no problem. The question would be what you do after that. And after that, there are a different option. Either you, go out and go to become a high school teacher, or you can leave, or you can find something to do. But one major thing is that you cannot, at my time, to become a professor at the university or become working at the university, because by definition, the Hebrew University would not have taken any Arab or any Palestinian for a full time. Now, to become a teacher myself, that was not an option, because previously, because of the activism, I am Israeli intelligence who controlled the schools in the Arab community, 1948, will not allow you to become a teacher. I was once a teacher. I was fired in 1974, became a teacher again in al-Faham for 2 years for high school, teaching biology. I was fired by the Israeli intelligence, which they call it the Education Ministry / Arab Affairs. And so after that, when I was fired, I just went and had my PhD. So therefore, to go back to teach in high school, which I love to do that. The only thing that I can do now is to go to and start teaching at Birzeit University. in West Bank. And of course, we have a connection. We worked with Birzeit before, so I started to teach at Birzeit University. Doing your PhD in biology and in microbiology, you do research and you go and start teaching at Birzeit. There is no research, no funding, no budgets for research. So within 2 years, you start feeling that you are really drying up. So you have to really do research. And therefore, I decided that I would like to leave and come to the United States for a postdoc position, to do a postdoc to research. Now, my specialty and my PhD was microbial ecology, which was part of the channel we want to build between the Mediterranean and the Dead Sea to make the Dead Sea a solar lake for energy. My work there was really related to keeping the upper layer transparent without no floating stuff, so the sunlight can penetrate and can heat the bottom of the lake. That's really sophisticated, and that brings remind me of the one thing that happened when I started my PhD. When I started my PhD, I was supposed to be funded by an Israeli authority for water authority. And when they apparently knew that a Palestinian Arab was going to do the work, they withhold the funding. My PhD mentor, Dr. Moshe Shiloh, he asked me, he said, listen, can you give me a month and I'll find money? So I said, okay, I'll look for money. And this company that took the patents for clarification of water from my PhD, the patents were actually assigned to them. So that tells you, the background of all this discrimination, of all, how to manage these things. Very difficult emotionally. But we survived, and not many Arab students really were at the time. I was, I believe, the third PhD in sciences in the Arabs of 48, which is really
quite impressive.
Yeah, and while we were really working aggressively at the Hebrew University with the Arab student unions, we were able to influence the university authorities so that the Arab students from the high schools, when they apply to Israeli universities, there are no Arab universities, of course, Israeli universities, that their exams are going to be in Arabic, not in Hebrew. Because if you go to Hebrew, then that's what we did. Then we only you take maybe 1%, because it's very difficult. If we agreed with them that maybe we have to give the Arab students exams in Arabic to get into the university, like the SAT, and they agreed, and we were able to get that. And since we got that, we were able to bring the number of the Arab students. And when I left in 1986, there was about from 300, 400 students in the whole Hebrew University. It was about 3,000 students.
Okay.
Today we're talking more than 20,000 in all of the Israeli universities, which really, that period of time influenced how this thing developed. And today, we are not anymore 300. We are really about 20% of the population in the universities. We are not less in the faculty, but in the university we are that number. So that's. So this activism that we had in the Hebrew University during that period of time helped other students and future students to be able to join, to be able to be part of the whole thing.
Part of the university.
And one other thing that we have achieved is changing the policy of the medical school in the Hebrew University. They had what we used to call them, because we're pushing. We used to say that they have numerous clauses. Numerous clauses, this is a term came from Germans, which mean a quota. So meaning that you have 3 Arab students every year in the medical school only out of 100. 1 Christian, 1 Muslim, 1 Druze. And so you have to appease the Muslim and the Christian and the Druze, and therefore they have 1 of each. So we were able to change that, and actually in the year that they changed the rule, after we had big fights with the university authorities, They have about 12 Arab students in that year. That was a great achievement. I never heard about before. And the medical school in Jerusalem was the only medical school at the time. So therefore, the number of doctors will be a very minimum in the Arab community. Today, it's a different story. Today, we have the number of doctors or physicians in the Arab villages is very high, and actually one of the highest in the world in some villages.
Okay.
So that's really the background of the university and the activism and some of the achievements that we have done. At Birzeit University, when I finished from Birzeit University, I went to the look for a postdoc at the NIH in the US. So a friend of mine, the late Shawqi Qassis, he helped me in getting my application, and he went around and found a funding and a place for me to go. And I came in 1987 to the NIH in Bethesda, Maryland. And I joined John Robbins' group. John Robbins is one of the best vaccinologists in the world. He passed away last Thanksgiving, and I owe him my career. Everything I know about immunology and vaccines, it's his work. So I joined that group, and there is a shift from microbiology to vaccinology, vaccines. And because he asked me, what do you want? I said, I want something that when I go back, I can go back with something that I can work in Birzeit, for instance. So this is why we chose to go into vaccinology and vaccine development. And I started at the NIH for 5 years. And if you have a J1 visa, you have to go back for residence in your original country before you apply to change status. Now, in my case, there's no way to go back to because Birzeit was closed by the Israeli occupation. And, to go back home for what? So then I had to move to the corporate arena where they asked for a green card for me. But for that, I needed to have an application or a letter from the Israeli Foreign Ministry that they allow me to stay. So the letter is very interesting. The guy sent a letter to the NIH and to the State Department that the Israeli State Department does not have any objection for Dr. Ali Fattom to stay in the United States. So that's great. I moved to the industry, to a company called Univax, and the Walter Reed investigators sponsored me because I was working on infectious diseases and vaccines for that infectious disease called Staphylococcus aureus, which is really the MRSA people recognize more. It's a big problem, and the military, the army interested in that because a lot of infections with the Staphylococcus and multi-drug resistant Staphylococcus happened there. So they sponsored me for a green card, and a few courses, it went smoothly, and I became having green card. And then I got also the citizenship. When I moved from the NIH to the company called Univax, I was working on Staphylococcus as main vaccine, but also other bacterial vaccines. And we were able to bring the Staphylococcus all the way to phase 3 clinical trials. And we also invented with a friend of mine who worked for me, Dr. Sufyan Naifer from Tunisia. He's a great chemist, and we, at that time in the 90s, were talking about tobacco as a addiction or not addictive, and they came back and they say, well, nicotine is addictive material. So then we said, okay, can we do a vaccine for nicotine? And Sufyan worked on the chemistry. He's a synthetic chemist. He worked on the chemistry, and we started a project, and in fact we went into phase 2 clinical trial with that later on for smoking cessation. We had a promise, but it did not realize in phase 3 clinical trial. We did not pass or reach the primary endpoint. So in 2010 I moved to Ann Arbor because they have a new technology at the University of Michigan. and they want to bring it to more applicative research and applications in vaccines. And they wanted somebody expert in vaccines. So in 2010, arriving in Ann Arbor and start working on making vaccines and vaccine for diseases that no vaccines are available for. One of them is RSV, which is respiratory syncytial virus that causes infection in newborn and preterm infants or neonates, and also in the elderly. And we got funds from the NIH, from Gates Foundation to do that, and we start working. And we expanded that to other respiratory. And it came out that this technology, which is an oil in water nano-emulsion, it's a nano technology that can be delivered intranasally. And intranasally meaning that you can immunize in the nose instead of injecting. Okay. And that will create immune response, a very strong immune response, local and inside or systemic. While injectables in the arm, they will give you only systemic immune response, not mucosal immunity. And the respiratory, you want to have you need to have the immunity also in the lungs and in the throat and so forth. So therefore, this technology would be of great use. Yeah. And so we are working on several vaccines in this arena. We are working on respiratory, like the RSV, are going on the anthrax. And also we found out that also it can work against sexually transmitted diseases. And because also it's a mucosa in the vaginal tissue, it's a mucosa. Therefore, we could immunize in the nose and protect against genital herpes in this case. So we have a program, active program with genital herpes. And most of this work is funded by the NIH through contracts, through grants, and so forth. And when the issue with the COVID-19 started a few months ago, then the question was, we are a respiratory vaccine company. We should have something to work with against this, vicious virus. And we start working on a vaccine that can be given intranasally, because what we are seeing more and more is that the COVID-19 or the SARS-CoV-2 is transmitted from one person to the other through the nose, through the nasal and the nasopharyngeal carriage. And some people are asymptomatic and they are really transferring the virus to others and spread the virus. And that's the major issue. It is the spread of the virus. If you are able to control the colonization and the spread, you maybe influence the whole pandemic spread. That was the idea, in addition to having immunity, internal immunity, and the mucosal immunity that can prevent the disease. We are working with other parties to get the antigen, and then we can combine and we can get into the clinic with this. Hopefully in a few months we'll be in the clinic with that. The other area of interest is that these nano-emulsion have a very unique property or attribute. If you hit with the virus is killed within a few minutes. So we said, okay, well, you remember the transmission is also happening when you take a hand to nose, surface to nose, and so forth. And if somebody gets exposed. So what we think that we could have that nano-emulsion, okay, and swab your nose. So in case you are exposed, you can kill that virus, you can kill that bacteria, and that should help you really become, not to become infected. And we developed a product that will be launched soon. It's called Nano Bio Protect. Is a swab that you can swab your nose every couple of hours. Just go like this, and then you have hopefully a protection against infections, and that can protect you from getting exposed to the infection. So this is where we at right now. So as you can see, the career really was driven by part politics, part practicality, and part luck. I think that I had great people along the way. I think the system supported me very much well, and also if you look at the funding, I never had an issue with the funding. We always have funds from the NIH and from the government. And, as everybody else, so you can feel that you are equal here. It's not like back home where you are not at the privilege of being equal. Even today when you go and speak there, and sometimes I was invited to speak a few years ago, and the first thing that comes from people's mouth, oh, he doesn't look like an Arab. He doesn't speak like an Arab. As if you are really below, you're not equal. And that's something that people have said that or experienced that for many years. Still until today, doctors, we have about 20% of the doctors in the Israeli school hospitals are Arabs. Still, people exercise that racism against them, although they are the highest ranks, but that doesn't really give you a privilege in this. You are always that person that they have in the back of their mind that you are not equal. So in this country, it's a different story. In this country, there are some changes after 9/11, but in general, I think that it's welcoming. People are nice, welcoming, and you can do whatever you can. And therefore, I think that if there is any message from all of this, is that this country has given you an opportunity. So take the advantage of this opportunity, advance, and don't forget where you come from. That's the thing. You have to learn your tradition, your language, your religion, whether you're Christian or Muslim, but you have to preserve those things. You have to preserve the bridges and the relationship with the old country. I have to do that because all my sisters and the brothers are still there, and they live there. Definitely. And for us Palestinians, very important. You have to keep that identity regardless. Sometimes you have to pay a price, but you pay the price, but that's something that you have to keep. And therefore, in generality, I think that the door is open for everybody. And if you go look around, I think I'm proud of the Arab American community across the board, because I think we are one of the best successful communities in the United States. Whether we look at the Syrians, look at the Palestinians, the Egyptian, everywhere from all over the Arab world, we are doing a great job in this country and with great service to our nation.
For sure. I totally believe you. That's such a great story that you shared, and I hope that it benefits everyone. Something else. So you see, because you're working on this vaccine and stuff like that, what do you think of all the news that is happening when you open the news and say and hear someone say maybe we should use disinfectants? Or what about that one medicine that they keep mentioning? So what are your opinions? What are your opinions on that?
Well, this is a long story. We're not prepared for this. And we missed an opportunity when we had the old SARS in 2002, 2003, because that SARS was not as vicious as this SARS. They are cousins. They are not identical. They are cousins. They have lots of shared things. But we're learning that this one is totally different. It's very aggressive. We can carry it in our nose and in our throats, while the old SARS, you can carry it in the lungs only. So the way it behaves is different. So it's more aggressive, and it took different paths. And what we've seen also is that transmission from one person to the other, it is much easier. And this is why we see all this explosion in transmission. Now, there are different ways of deal with this thing. One is what people tried is what they call the herd immunity, meaning allow people to die, allow people to get infected. And, if you are infected and you convalesce or you are recovering, you will have immunity. And if we have enough people with immunity, then those people without immunity are protected because we all have immunity. It's the herd immunity. That's the way we look at it immunologically. But what we've seen is that this one is causing also disease in specific or serious disease in specific populations, like all elderly. And that's a big problem. And but we see because with you infected, it causes inflammation in the lungs. That inflammation is horrible. And that can cause the collapse of all the systems in our body, like the kidney, heart, and so forth. Now, there are some drugs out there. There are two ways to deal with this, by the way. One is to prevent, and one is to treat. The only way to prevent is to have a vaccine, develop a vaccine for that. Vaccine development, it's not a very fast track. It takes 5 to 10 years on normal conditions to develop a vaccine. And the success rate for the vaccine is about 10%, let's call it. So out of 100, 90 will fail, 10 will succeed, or 15 will succeed. And therefore, it's a process. And I'll get to that in a minute. The other part is to treat. To treat is immediate. You have somebody infected, you need to treat that person. And this is where all these drugs started to pop up, like chloroquine and hydroxychloroquine and remdesivir and all these things. And these are really repurposed. The hydroxychloroquine and the chloroquine are drugs for malaria. Malaria is not a microorganism. It's not a virus. It's a different disease, and therefore. But this drug has some properties that can affect the virus, and it's known. Therefore, people thought maybe we should take advantage of the antiviral activity of this virus, of this drug, and treat the virus.
You can't?
They tried it, and there are some successes, like that study in France and other places. And what they found is that they can treat, and some people really recovered. So it becomes like a magic. And then our president, he took it and said, this is a magic bullet. That's not a magic bullet, because what people in the science part were telling him, this is for a drug. We need to apply it, and we have to do a test under control, placebo-controlled clinical trials, and show that this thing works. And if you cannot show it in a clinical trial, we cannot recommend it. And this is why they started to try to do a controlled clinical trials, and there are few ongoing right now. But in the meantime, other people are using it, and when they use it, they see all kinds of stuff. So for instance, we just got a study that came out that people who got the chloroquine, the hydroxychloroquine, they have more mortality and deaths than the group that did not use that material. That's a blow to the whole concept of using that. For instance, they are seeing that people who are taking chloroquine, for instance, they will have a damaged heart in the heart, and the rhythm of the heart is disturbed. But that's also another blow. So you are taking an approved vaccine, drug for something that is there, and it works, and you try to put it here, it did not work. So now with everybody saying, just get rid of it, it's not going to work and so forth. What I'm saying is that no, you have to wait for the controlled study, because the controlled study will tell you when to give it to the people, for how long, how much, and what to look for, and what people should not take it. Because person with a heart disease, you cannot give him that drug, because that drug interferes with the rhythm of the heart. So you cannot give him that drug. So all these things now still ongoing. There is other antivirals that are still in the test. And again, the same story goes there. You have control study ongoing, and people just do study open label, we call it. And they conclude, it did not work, it did not give any effect. You have to wait. Now, drugs will give us a breathing space for us to develop the vaccines. Because the vaccine takes time. Now, what the FDA and EMEA and other regulatory institutions, they got together and they said, well, let's condense the whole process. What takes 5 years, let's do it in 18 months. So they squeeze the whole thing. So they cut in the beginning. You don't need to do A, B, and C to get to the clinic. You can get to the clinic with minimum. you can look at the design of the clinical trials is different, is short. So instead of following people for 1 year to start the second phase, you follow them for 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
And you go directly from phase 1 to the efficacy trial, which is in normal time, it takes years.
Mm-hmm.
So it allow you to shift from phase 1 to phase 2 in the field. And if you get into the field and you show efficacy, then the FDA will say, okay, you have the data, your vaccine works, you can start giving it to people. They will license it. That cannot happen under normal circumstances.
Yeah.
That's a big compromise from the regulatory institutions to allow for something to happen. But even with all these compromise, with all these squeezed timelines, it will take 12 to 18 months to get an idea that the vaccine can work.
Just an idea.
Yeah, so that's and you are looking at some technologies that never shown effect before. So there are new technologies. So a new technology is a new disease, and you are going into phase 3 clinical trial on the field. So the chances are really, we hope that the chances will be good.
Yeah.
But you have to be realistic. You know, the DNA vaccines, the RNA vaccine, they never show, there is no licensed vaccine with these technologies. Now, people say that they got big monies, for doing these trials from the government, from the Gates Foundation, from other organizations. So more and more really getting into that. And there is the classical way of approaching this, which is like we did with the pertussis and the other vaccines. And those are coming into the clinic for phase 1, hopefully in about 2 to 3 months, in July timeframe, I believe, one company. So those may have some effects. So, and when you look at all of these, out of about 70 already vaccines are on the table. About 95
for COVID, or
yes, yeah.
Okay.
They're all applying. Everybody who has a technology, everybody who has the an idea, everybody thinks that his vaccine is the best and it's gonna work, and the others will not gonna work. But all are injectable. And with the respiratory vaccine, injectables are not the best vaccines, because if you look at the flu efficiency or efficacy is about 20 to 40%. In the last 15 years, we arrived at 50% only once. So the respiratory infections are a different game. So the systemic immunity may be not that good.
Yeah.
So I believe, and this is maybe our 5 cents, all of this, is that giving it intranasally can protect the respiratory system and create a first line of defense locally. So if the virus come in, then you have the mucosal immunity will come first and fight, and then the systemic immunity will join. If you don't have first lines of defense, the virus can come in and establish itself, and then you have to clear it. So the task is much more complicated. Now, what we are seeing in these days is that the immunity, some people get immunity, but that immunity is not good enough. Because we are seeing that the virus is coming back, and when it comes back, can infect people who have already antibodies. So it's not an antibody issue. Maybe it's a part, but it's not everything an antibody is an antibody.
So you don't think that the antibodies will do much help?
No, it will help. I'm not saying no. So you having what we call neutralizing antibody is one part of the story. It cannot be the whole part of the story. It can help the body overcome the infection. So it helps you, and then your body will cover the rest. By itself, it has an effect, positive effect. We know that. There is no doubt about that. But it's not enough. It's not enough for respiratory infection. It's not enough for genital infections, sexually transmitted diseases. For that, to our mind, and many others now believe in it, you have to have what we call wave 1 and wave 2. So wave 1 is the local, wave 2 is the systemic. So virus comes, wave 1 will block it, and bounce it out, and then the systemic can join the fight.
Mhm.
So it's a tricky, but we believe that maybe we are able to make a difference in this. And that really would require change of paradigm, change of thinking.
Yeah.
Boys, they know the classical way how things should work, and they just will go that way. But as a small company, when you have some innovation, you have to fight, and
Yeah.
this is an easy fight.
Hmm. Well, I mean, I really hope that this, this vaccine gets developed sooner better than later. What advice do you have to people, especially, today? I don't know if you celebrate, but today is the first day of Ramadan for many people. Um, and, earlier it was Easter, there was the Orthodox Easter and Protestant Easter. There were so many religious celebrations, and Arabs are usually very social people, especially during this time. So what's your advice to people right now?
Well, people have to follow directions from the
Hmm.
health authorities. I don't think, and everybody is following
Hmm.
it. I believe, getting together, and that hurts because you cannot invite people for iftar. You cannot
Yeah.
go and join people for Easter. It's very difficult. It's a difficult time, and there is no way out. It's not like you just take the plane and you go for vacation. You cannot take the
Hmm.
plane these days. You have to stay
Yeah.
home. All of these things, it's we behave like everybody else. We have to comply with all these regulations.
Hmm.
We cannot afford going out and get infected. I would not do that. I come to work because I consider it essential
Well,
because we
of
are
course.
working on COVID-19. But definitely others that are staying home, stay home. Stay
Hmm.
out. Don't mingle and don't bring people in.
Hmm.
And I think people will suffer.
Hmm.
Especially those who have big families in this country.
Yeah.
And there are many of those. Michigan here, for instance, we don't have that much. All my family is out, is back home. But
Yeah.
you miss the friends, you miss this feeling that there are people around you, and it sounds funny that you have to talk to your neighbor with the FaceTime. And
Yeah.
so I think it's safety is very important, and
Hmm.
it's not only your own safety, but you are part of really of the collective
Hmm.
around you. The whole state, the whole country is really
Hmm.
in this case. And even back home, here we're talking about United States, space, and people far from each other. I look back home in our town right now, and everybody lives next to everybody, and you cannot really separate. But still, people are sitting home and they're trying not to have big gathering and so forth.
Hmm.
And under closure, they have a curfew from 6 o'clock in the evening until 4 o'clock in the morning,
Hmm.
and that's difficult. But
Yeah.
you have to do what you have to do to keep people safe and to
Sure.
try to get over this thing. Hopefully, sooner we will get something good coming out, and everybody will use it. Everybody will be safe, and we look back and say, "Okay, well, we passed."
Do you think that people can start going outside before the vaccine, or no?
Yes, but there is. I believe that you have to build the confidence in those
Hmm.
people. I know that some people will go out anyway. Okay, they will feel that I am strong, I'm young, I cannot get the virus. But the problem is not the young people. The problem is really transferring or transmitting
Hmm.
the virus to other people at risk.
Yeah.
So that there become really a big issue. My belief is that once we have a drug that can treat this disease, then we can allow ourselves to take the risk, because at least you know that if you are infected, there is a treatment. I will not go back to what I used to do if I don't know that there is a drug that can help me.
Okay.
All right. So this is what I said. Why I said that the drugs will give you the breathing time to get into the vaccine.
Hmm.
So that's one, and I believe that's gonna happen. Maybe in a few weeks we'll hear about a good outcome from one of those clinical trials. Maybe the chloroquine, hydroxychloroquine, will be designed in a way that will go to a specific population, that some population will be excluded from that use, and that will give us a good results, which is great. So all these things are really coming up. We'll talk about between the time that our stable genius admitted that there is a problem, which was March, right? March 15th. We are talking about April 24. We are talking about 4 weeks. This whole big thing happened in 4 weeks. You cannot find a solution in 4 weeks. So you have to work harder and hard and hard in order to get a solution. So therefore, this is what you see, everybody is jumping around. We have to say, you know, I think that the person who best dealt with it was Tony Fauci, but he said, wait a minute, let's think, let's do the things that we do usually. Let's make sure that this thing works. And you don't destroy the baby with the dirty water. You have to, there is something good might be here for some big bunch of people. Don't throw it out. And this is why really people are cautioned not to jump to conclusion. You cannot publish your data and your observation in the news in New York Times and in another. You have to put it into the test where scientists look at it and they say, okay, it was done this way. This is what we are seeing there. This works, or this doesn't work, or this work under these conditions, under these instructions. That's the way it's going to be. So I think that we will become more confident to go out if we know that there is a drug, number one. And number two, there is a vaccine that comes our way. Once you get the vaccine and the vaccine works, there are vaccines that work at 100% efficacy or 95% efficacy. But this is different game. We have to be careful. We have to do everything possible really to stay away from it and try to push it down and trying not to transmit it around.
Well, thank you so much. This was very informative, and I hope that all our audience gets to listen to this and learn from all the things that you shared with us today. Is there anything else that you would like to add specifically?
For the young Arab Americans, that they have a great opportunity here, and they have to take advantage of it. And we have to be in different places. Many people go to graduate school and the medical schools. You have to get involved in more than just treating people to become a professional. You have to get into research. You have to get into bigger picture. We are absent in many areas where the influence is, and like scientists, if you are a good physician you can be also a good researcher, developing new drugs and so on. Be involved in research. I see many people really finish medical school and they go and have a clinic and they try to make money and so forth. That's not good enough. We are at a point where the new generation of Arab Americans should start thinking about a big picture. We have to be where we need to be. Not just to make money, we need to make money, but also we need to be in different places. We have to be in all circles. And I'm not talking about politics. Politics will get to the politics, but I'm talking about even professional. Because if you are there as a professional and you are a proud Arab, you are bringing a good impression to where you come from, to the whole stereotypes that we are suffering from. So, and we are bringing our cause, our qadi. I really like to see more Arab Americans, professionals in different society, chemical society and engineering. I know there are many engineers in this area, but a lot of other areas in medical research, we need to influence. And that influence comes all over the place, is not only one way. And money is not the only way to have an influence. You have to look at the big picture and look big, and we have to be able to exercise all this potential that we have. So I wish when I go to a conference and I go to meetings, international meeting, to see more Arabs. We are very little. Not many people are in those professional places. We need to have those. And to all these physicians, make money, but also think bigger.
Thank you so much, Dr. Fattom. I really appreciate the time that you gave and the information that you shared with us. Hope all is well with you, and good luck with all the work that you're doing.